Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Tyler Rowley. I'm here to speak tonight on behalf of a group of people who haven't been mentioned yet. Unborn children, unborn human beings. What's being passed out to you right now that some of you are declining to look at are accurate to-scale fetal models of a 10 to 12 week old fetus in the womb. Can I have a show of hands of who has one in front of them, just so I know for my testimony?
No, you can continue on. Whoever wants to look at them will.
Okay. Whoever hasn't looked at one, this is a to-scale model of a 10 to 12 week old fetal model. Because I'm speaking on behalf of children this size and in the womb, I think it's important not only that you see what they look like, but that we actually mention them. Because we've heard all sorts of reasons for why it should be legal to kill this little boy or little girl. So I'm going to talk about why it should be illegal to kill this little boy or this little girl. Today I've heard, why does anyone think women shouldn't have the right to make these decisions privately? The lady testifying couldn't fathom why this decision isn't solely left up to a woman and her doctor. Here's the reason. Because an abortion directly and intentionally targets a young, beautiful, living, growing, unique human being. Abortion kills people. So that's the reason some people think that the decision to kill those young people shouldn't just be between two people that are not this person. That's as simply and as plainly as I can put it. I take a little bit of offense how so many people can sit up here and they can't even fathom why we're debating this. That's offensive, especially to the human beings you are killing during the abortion procedure. We're here because of these children, not because we hate women.
Madam Chair. Senator Nasselbush.
Sir, what about the women who die in botched abortions? Do you care about those women?
I do, ma'am, and I'll get to that.
Well, I wish you would proceed to that.
I will get to that. I've heard that our stance is backwards and harmful, and that our stance constitutes hateful rhetoric. We are here to protect lives of children, and we are the ones being called hateful and backwards, as if believing in the phrase, all are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are, and we made it the first one in case you missed it, life. But we're backwards because we believe that phrase to a T, and you dance around it? No, that's not backwards. It's not progressive to kill people who can't defend themselves. It's progressive to believe all men are created equal and have a right to life, and then you protect that right to life. I've heard, even if you don't want an abortion, don't have one. That would have been a great argument in the 1860s. If you don't want a slave, don't own one. Get out of my way. Stop speaking up for them. You don't want a slave, don't own one. It's a great argument. No, we don't not interfere when people are being hurt and enslaved. Good people stand up for people who are being unjustly killed and enslaved. So the argument, if you don't want a slave, don't own one, doesn't work for someone who cares about other people. The argument, if you don't want an abortion, don't have one, doesn't work for people who care about all people. I heard that women died before abortion was legal. How many children die when abortion is legal? 100%. 50 million if you're counting. I heard that my grandmother's life was precious. And Susan, I love you to death, and your grandmother's life was precious, is precious. But every life is precious. We're pitting lives against each other, saying that these women who died, their life was precious. But these children who die, are they less precious because they're younger and smaller? They're not precious? In the overflow room, a man was getting frustrated with the testimonies. He stood up and he said, "What about the baby's rights?" The responses he got from the other people in the crowd upstairs or down the hall, it's not a baby. It's not a baby until it's born. It's only tissue until it's born. Really? You see, nobody gets up here and makes those arguments. But behind closed doors, that's what people are saying. When you stick the argument in people's face, what about the baby? The argument behind closed doors is, it's not a baby. It's just tissue. Until birth, it's not a baby. It's not a baby until viability. The problem with that argument is that it is completely, scientifically, medically, genetically, philosophically, untrue. I testified in front of the House committee a couple of months ago, and I told the committee I was not going to bore them to death with quote after quote after quote from scientists and doctors and embryologists and geneticists, because I just assumed that everybody knew the basic, common, plain scientific fact that an unborn child is most definitely a human being in the same exact way that my child, my 2-year-old, is a human being, in the same way that you're a human being. Same size? Nope. Same age? Nope. Unique genetic code that's human and living and growing? Yes, that's called a human being. And if you want to test the beating heart, you're more than welcome to. Because they have a beating heart after 20 days. That means every abortion performed in Providence, Rhode Island, stops the beating heart of a young child. But I'm going to bore you a little bit with some of those quotes. I will give you a drop in the ocean of these quotes from medical experts, just in case there is one person on this committee that denies the science of when human life begins, and in case there's anyone behind me that wants to deny that science. By all the criteria of modern molecular biology, life is present from the moment of conception. Professor Jaime Gordon, Mayo Clinic. Although life is a continuous process, fertilization is a critical landmark because a new, genetically distinct human organism is formed when the chromosomes of the male and female pronuclei blend in the oocyte. That's from Ronan and O'Ralley Hill. It's a human embryology textbook used in most major medical universities. The zygote thus formed represents the beginning of a new life, J.P. Greenhill. It is the penetration of the ovum by a sperm and resultant mingling of the nuclear material that constitutes the culmination of the process of fertilization and marks the initial of the life of a new individual. This is the last one. When fertilization is complete, a unique genetic human being exists. See Christopher Hook, MD, Mayo Clinic. I have about 70 more that I won't bore you with. In our time, let's talk a little bit about history, and I'll wrap up quickly. In our time, or in not just in our time, but in recent history, we have seen the denial of human rights to Native Americans. We have seen the denial of human rights to the Jewish people in Germany less than a century ago. We have seen the denial of human rights to women in this country less than a century ago. And about 150 years ago, we saw the denial of human rights to African Americans. Their legal personhood was denied. They were enslaved, they were murdered, they were raped, and they were abused. And you know what the argument was 150 years ago? I've become a bit of a student on this because I've been interested in how a country could for so long, for so many decades, centuries, justify capturing and enslaving and beating and owning and maiming and raping and hurting a human being. You know what the argument for slavery was? The overwhelming argument? It was the merciful thing to do. We saved those wretched creatures from their homes in Africa, and we gave them a good life. Those abolitionists from the North, they don't care about the slaves. They're just doing it for ulterior motives. The slaves are treated the best down in the South. The black man thrives in the South and has a comfortable bed to sleep in. In the North, when they get fired from their jobs, their employer throws them out on the street. They suffer in the North. In the South, the black man is comfortable and he is given dignity. Those were the arguments back then about why it was justifiable to take away a human being's freedom. Those are the same arguments today to take away an unborn child's right to life. It's the humane thing to do. We have heard testimony after testimony after testimony about why it is humane to kill. You kill out of love. You kill out of compassion. But have you stopped and asked yourself, if you stand on good philosophical ground, is it ever okay to take away the life of an innocent human being, no matter how much you justify it in your own minds? That philosophy is called consequentialism. It's called utilitarianism. It means that as long as I can justify the outcomes of the evil act, it's okay. So here you go, senators. Here you are, senators. Here's your issue for today. Here's your issue. Here's your human rights issue of today. Is it time to add or continue to add one more human being to the list of people that you dehumanize because you've figured out why it's better for them to die for our society to thrive? Is that what you're going to stand on? Is that what you're going to be looked back and thought of? Who were the people who justified slavery? How could they have done that? Who were the people who justified abortion as being good for our society? Here's your issue. All men are created equal, and they all have a right to life, or most people are born equal and have a right to life, as long as they don't interfere too much with our lives. A woman who was a Planned Parenthood escort testified earlier. She invited you all down to Planned Parenthood to gain a perspective on how important abortion rights are. I want to extend a similar invitation to everybody. And I hope Planned Parenthood will be willing to comply with this idea. Let's set a date in June or July, before the summer's over, I hope, for everybody to go down to Planned Parenthood like she suggested. But let's not stop at the fence. Let's not stop at the wall. Let's go inside. Let's have an open surgery day. Let's gather to watch. It's not funny. Let's gather to watch Planned Parenthood nurses. Let's first gather to watch 6-week to 19-week He's 11. 19-week-old babies pulled apart, stabbed, suctioned to death. And if you think I'm exaggerating, please put it in your question at the end. Pulled apart, stabbed, and suctioned to death. And then let's also gather in the next room to watch the nurses dump the remains of those body parts into a strainer and flushed into the sewer system. Let's watch as closely as we can as the 6-week, the 10-week, the 12-week, the 15-week, the 19-week-old child in the womb gets pulled apart limb by limb, organ by organ, and then is dumped into the sewer system. God bless you all.